well, as much as I can, like your assessment of like coalition building, or at least not like outright attacking groups that might disagree or have a different basic, philosophy about how they go about things. But I'm thinking, in my personal experience, take for instance shelter reform. There's a lot of animal welfare, animal rescue type organizations that their mission statement says that we're trying to help animals, small animals, dogs and cats, but what they're really doing is murdering 90%, say, upwards of 90% of the animals. This includes groups like PETA and most SPCAs. And my interaction, like last summer after the No Kill conference in DC with Nathan Winograd, we went and I had organized protests of PETA, HSUS, and ASPCA. And as a result, we really got a lot of dialogue going within the movement that was not able, it was just like, that was the way to facilitate. I found like, that just bickering over the internet wasn't gonna do. Also, like protesting actual animal shelters, we've been able to save thousands of animals and get shelters to stop being kill shelters, when we had tried everything we could to sit down with these groups, form dialogues through conferences like this, and none of that was working. But protesting and taking certain tactics, even home demonstrations, really puts the pressure on in ways that nothing else could. And I'm just kind of saying, that's what I've seen work. And I don't know that, I just, personally, I cannot form a coalition with murderers, I'm not gonna do it with Temple Grandin, I'm not gonna do it with PETA or any of these, groups that actively are killing animals, that at the same time call themselves animal rights or call themselves concerned with individual animals. You know what I'm saying? I'm not.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I agree to a large extent with what you're saying also, because these organizations do things that I think are horrible. There should not be kill shelters. I think that my response is that sometimes you have to smack your friends in the head when they have it wrong, but not destroy the possibility of being friends with them. And so what I mean by that is I think that you can protest against an organization without necessarily removing them entirely from the coalitional struggles. And so I am against PETA's kill policies. And in fact, when I was interviewing for a job there, my being against it was one of the things that they did not like about it. However, for me to be like, well, therefore I will never support PETA, it leaves a lot of animals to be used as a means to promote a more radical end, because it means that instead of allowing them to be killed more painlessly or whatever, they're being killed in horrific and horrible ways. Like caged eggs, the battery cages that chickens are kept in for, to produce eggs. Like, I would want that entirely abolished. I would like an abolitionist perspective. But groups who get them the ability to open their wings in the cages have tangibly made those lives better for billions of chickens on a daily basis. But the problem is that when those groups then say, we've achieved our campaign, we don't have to do any more, they now have enough space to open their wings, right? To me, those campaigns are stepping stones to promote larger forms of awareness, and the problem only happens when you then stop that. So I think PETA, instead of focusing on killing animals more humanely, they should focus on ending pet breeding more explicitly within their policies, because of the breeding issues that are causing this overpopulation of animals and not the animals in themselves.
Yeah, that's one of those myths. Like, if anybody's versed on like Nathan Winograd and the no-kill movement, the idea of overpopulation itself is a way of justifying the killing, and that's actually completely incorrect. So, that's just, I had to call you on that, because that is one of the ways that people justify the killing, is to say that these, the overbreeding and overpopulation of these animals, but statistically that's just not correct.
My overbreeding is pet breeding, not
right, that's what I'm talking about.
Is that, we should stop pet breeding for all the oppressions that it creates. And,
right.
Allow for feral cats in societies to continuously exist, and set up, feeding stations for those animals, opposed to just trying to put them in shelters so that way they can live their lives unfettered. So it's not like, you know, perhaps I misspoke, it's not the overpopulation to me that I think is the issue. I think that it's the question of the way in which society is like, well, we can't have these animals in the street, let's cage them away, opposed to adopting and using adoption as a priority tactic. And when I see PETA's approaches, they are not focusing on adoption as much as adoption and anti-pet breeding as they are like, let's just kill them more human. And to me, that's a, you know, a fault within PETA.
Right. I guess like the last thing I'll just say is just that I feel like there are more than enough groups that are working towards a welfarist approach, trying to build coalitions, and I see that that's what this, well, at least the animal liberation, animal rights movement is becoming. And so I think it's really important for certain people that feel very strongly about abolition to keep with their integrity and not to compromise that for, you know, that's the way I feel. And also, yeah, there was something else I was going to say, but that's just pretty much it.
I have a quick question. I don't know if anybody else. Going back to, I know Gregor's work in working in other fields and other movements, and it kind of he speaks when he speaks about disability studies or eco-ableism, he goes to different communities that are not aware of that, and he told me this, and I think that's. And vice versa, in a strategic way, kind of going back to what you, Joe, were kind of noting, kind of being that, introducing it to the other people. Like, I think critiquing this whole purity thing, that no one's a vegan, and we all use animal-tested products, but it doesn't justify our actions either, and that we need to challenge this, but that we are still a movement of oppressors, and that we are not, John Multikin says, and the Black Liberation Movement has said it over and over, we are our own liberators. And we can be in solidarity and allies, but we have a great deal of moving forward to go. So I guess my question to Gregor is, and then to Joe, is Gregor, have you thought about your work in a strategic way, or do you do it more of an intellectual, hey, I'll try this out and see if it works, or have you really thought this out and saying, we're going to work with the, et cetera, this group and this group next, and grow larger and larger, and to kind of note a Quaker philosophy is that there's good within all, and everyone has a little bit of the truth, and kind of going with that, right? Like, but yeah, Gregor and Joe, that whole critiquing of the purity, right? That I think animal liberations have this problem of being so pure, right? Gregor.
Okay. Well, I think with me it's all the time a journey, because there's never a group, I mean, there is just no group who is perfect, right? Where I would say, well, they really took everything in account, including the disability community. Right? We have just as many hierarchies of what we covered, and I'm old enough to, right? I mean, the hierarchies changed, who's now in, who wasn't in like 30 years ago. But even when you look at that, I for example, crawl a lot, right? Having no legs. And I see crawling as something normal, but the movement uses crawling, like the demonization of crawling, to get ramps, right? So, I mean, it's simply that every group has, still blunders on that, as to what they see as, and what arguments they use, and they often don't step back to see how the argument is impacting the bigger picture. And I'm a big picture person. Like, I did actually conceptualize the BBC movie about Peter Singer in the 1990, which was aired in 1990, and because like Germany and so on, there was people didn't want to talk to him. So I have no problem talking with him, and I was talking with him decades ago. But the thing is, what I came up with, that is the disability rights approach about freedom of speech. It's really about who has a voice and who can take on whom, where. It's not so much whether you should, have someone, but I think there's actually a power, unbalanced within academia, because we don't have many disabled people within the philosophy department, for example, right? So